Hi, I'm Jilly G. Welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how to make my gluten-free baked zucchini fries. Such a great side dish, great as just a light lunch by themselves. Great with a hamburger, anything that you would put with French fries, regular potato fries. And this is such a great way to use zucchini from your garden. Some of these are not from my garden. A couple of them are. My zucchini plants are a little bit late this year, but they are producing, so that's really good. But it's one of my favorite ways to eat zucchini. Although I have a lot of different favorite ways that I like to eat zucchini, but this is one of them. And even people that don't really like zucchini very much, they enjoy this because it's got a breading, it's got some cheese. It's really delicious. So the first thing I've done is my oven is preheating to 425. So before I get started on my zucchini fries, I want to get my ranch dressing mixed together and put in the fridge. This recipe is actually in my cookbook. This is the dry ranch seasoning mix that I make, and then I put it in a jar and just keep it in the fridge for uses like this. In my cookbook, there is a recipe for a ranch dip that you can make with this seasoning mix. I prefer to make the dressing because it's a little bit thinner. And zucchini fries, they're not as sturdy as a French fry. And they do have breading, and so if you have a really thick dip, you don't want your breading to come off in the dip. So I find that a ranch dressing is a little bit better. And this is just 1 tablespoon of the dry ranch mix. I'll put the recipe in the description box, but it is in my cookbook. And I'm going to mix together my milk and this seasoning mix before I stir in my mayonnaise. And it really doesn't take very much at all. And that was just a 1/2 cup of milk and then a 1/2 cup of mayonnaise. And then just give this a really good mix till it's really combined. And it might look a little bit too thin right now, but after it sits in the fridge for a little bit, it does thicken up. Not a lot. I mean, it is a dressing. And then I have a little bowl we can just pour it into, and it will be very full. If I make this as a dressing, I would put it in something that is easier to pour out of for a dressing. But because I'll be using this as a dip for my zucchini fries, a bowl is a little bit better. So I'm going to stick this in the fridge. And then I've got a pretty good chunk of Parmesan cheese here. And for this recipe, I like to use the really fine grater here on my cheese grater. Because I'm going to be using the cheese as part of a breading, I like it to be fine. Although if you don't want to get a block of Parmesan cheese like this, if you could find a gluten-free version of the kind of the powdered Parmesan cheese, if you were like my family growing up, it was always on the table when you had spaghetti, and you'd sprinkle that can of cheese on your spaghetti. I don't use that anymore, but you could use that, and it's a really fine powder, and it would go well with the breadcrumbs. So I just prefer to use real cheese and shred it myself. And I'm aiming for about a 1/2 cup. And this is about a 1/2 cup, give or take. And even if you don't like Parmesan cheese, you don't have to put cheese in this. Or you could put in your favorite cheese. But I really like Parmesan cheese with the zucchini. I'm just going to put it here. I've got my breading station set up. I'll get it back in order as soon as I get my cheese off my cutting board. So to my Parmesan cheese, break it up a little bit. It's a really nice little fine shred here. And then in this bowl, I've got a 1/2 cup of gluten-free breadcrumbs. I always make my own breadcrumbs. I can get them down to a finer powder, and I know exactly what's in them. Whenever I have a loaf of gluten-free bread, like the end, or maybe you have an odd number of pieces of bread, it's not really enough to make a sandwich, I'll throw those into a bag in the freezer. And then whenever I want to make a recipe like this, I've already got some bread in the freezer. And then I just toast it in the oven and then put it through my food processor and make really fine gluten-free breadcrumbs. So I'm just going to pour my breadcrumbs in here with my cheese. You don't have to use breadcrumbs for this recipe. You could use some cornflake crumbs. I've got a recipe here on my channel that is gluten-free cornflake chicken. That would be a really good breading. Some other kind of gluten-free cracker. Something like that that makes a really nice crumb for a coating. And then once you mix the breadcrumbs in with the cheese, it really helps to keep the cheese separated so it's not a clump of cheese. And then for my seasonings, I've got a ½ teaspoon of pepper, a ½ teaspoon of salt, a ¼ teaspoon of onion powder, and a ¼ teaspoon of garlic powder. Just go all in there. And then I'm going to mix this together with my fork, just so I don't get garlic and onion all over my fingers, although I'm going to anyway, so it doesn't matter. My oven is preheated. So once you've got that all mixed together, just set that aside. And now in this middle container, I'm going to put 2 eggs. And I find that it's so helpful when you're setting up kind of a breading station like this to have some pretty shallow plates or bowls. I like these plates because they're bigger than a regular plate. They're not really bigger. I like these plates because they do have more of a cavity than a plate does. But any kind of shallow bowl works. And then I really like this. It's actually a lid to a casserole dish. But it's such a great thing to put eggs in when you need to dredge something in them. It works out perfect for French toast or something like that. Ooh. So just 2 eggs, and then I just mix them up really good. And then I've got 4 zucchini that I've already washed. And then in this plate here, I've got a ½ cup of my gluten-free flour. This is such a fast and easy side dish to whip up. So now that everything is ready, I'm going to start getting my zucchini cut up into French fry sizes, kind of. You could also add seasoning to your flour and your eggs if you want to, but I like it the best in with the breadcrumbs. And depending on the size of your zucchinis, I usually go in half, and then I can usually get maybe 4 out of 1/2 of the half. And if you have really big zucchinis, you can cut out the middle where the seeds are. But these ones are pretty small seeds, so I don't mind. These zucchini fries can be any flavor that you want. I just like the onion and garlic, but you could add Italian seasoning to this, spicy seasoning, really whatever flavors that you like your zucchini fries to be. They're doing construction again in my neighborhood, so if you hear the loud noises in the background, it is not me. And I think I'll just start out with 3 zucchini to begin with. We'll see. And if you run out of anything, you can always add more flour or eggs if you've got more breadcrumbs and cheese. Or just save the rest of your zucchini for something else. This is also a great recipe that you could cut your zucchini into chunks, put your breadcrumb mixture in a bowl, stir everything together, and then just cook it all together on a cookie sheet. Makes a delicious side dish. But I really like making it into fries and then dipping it into the ranch dressing. And then before we get started with breading everything, it is really messy. I do have 2 cookie sheets here with some cooling racks. These aren't the most ideal cooling racks to put zucchini fries on, but my other cooling racks have some kind of plastic coating that is not really oven safe. So this is what I use. If I were gonna bake these without a cooling rack, I would definitely put down some parchment paper just so my cheese breading doesn't get stuck to the bottom of the pan. I didn't finish cutting up my last zucchini. I was talking too much. I'm gonna move everything aside. Let me clean up really quick. Now I can bring everything a little bit closer. And then all you do is just get a zucchini fry, toss it in the flour. You don't want it to have a lot of flour. And then just tap off any excess. Then we'll go right into the egg. Let any excess egg drip off. And then right into the breadcrumb, cheese, and seasonings. And then right onto the cooling rack. And you kind of want to have everything the same size, but clearly this zucchini is bigger than my other ones. And that's just fine. And I should have done this to start with, but use one hand for flour and egg and the other hand for breadcrumbs. It's a little less messy that way. And my zucchini fries, they're big enough that they stay on my cooling rack. If you cut your zucchini into smaller pieces, then you would want a smaller cooling rack. So now that I filled up one cooling rack on my cookie sheet, I'm gonna wash up. I've already washed up before. When your fingers get really, really messy, wash up in between because it will fall off into your other mixtures and make everything kind of lumpy. So now that I've got one tray ready, you could put 2 trays in the oven at the same time, but usually I just do one, and then when this one is finished, I can throw in the other one. If you're worried that this will cool off too much, for the last few minutes of baking for the other one, you could throw this one back in and they'd all be warm at the same time. And then we'll go about 20 to 25 minutes, and then I'm just going to keep going with the rest of my zucchini and my breading. So my zucchini fries, they went for 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how crispy you like them. And what I really like about having them already on a cooling rack is you can just leave them there and they'll stay crispy until you're ready to serve them. And then for reheating, I don't ever put these in the microwave. I put them exactly like this in the oven just to get them reheated. I'm not going to taste these ones. As you saw, I just took them out of the oven. But let me get my ranch dressing out of the fridge. It's very full. And then I just give it a stir. And it has thickened up a little bit. But again, I like a thinner dip with my zucchini fries so you don't lose part of your zucchini in a really thick sour cream dip. Although in my cookbook is a recipe to make this into a vegetable dip, which works really good for raw vegetables, but not so much for something like this. Let's get a few on my plate here. And they're pretty crispy. Nice and soft in the middle. So you want something that you can dip your zucchini fries into. So good. Crispy on the outside, soft in the middle, just delicious. Such a perfect side dish when zucchini is in season. This recipe can be made with yellow squash as well. If you've got yellow squash and zucchini, you could do them both the exact same way. And that's another use for your yellow squash. So delicious. Such a great side dish. This also goes really great for something like brunch or lunch or just a snack. It's delicious for any meal. I'd eat this for breakfast. And you don't have to use ranch. You could use fry sauce. You could use your favorite salad dressing. Anything that you like to dip vegetables in. And you can change the flavor whenever you make these. I just use the onion and garlic and salt and pepper as my main seasoning, and of course the Parmesan cheese. But you could do something like Italian seasoning, or maybe a Southwest flavoring, anything like that. These would also be really good dipped in a blue cheese dressing. Possibilities are endless. But such a great recipe if you have a lot of zucchini or yellow squash. If you're tired of making zucchini bread, or if you're just looking for something new and a little bit different. So delicious. Let me know what you think if you make this recipe. Let me know what spices you like to put on your zucchini. Maybe you already make this recipe. It's so fast and easy and so delicious. It's also a great way to use up leftover ends of gluten-free bread. Just blend it up in a food processor and you've got some great breadcrumbs. Or maybe you've made some gluten-free crackers and you've got a few left and you're not quite sure what to do with them. It's not enough for a lot of people. Gluten-free crackers work really great for this breading. Again, cornflakes, anything like that makes such a great breading for the zucchini fries. But thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any questions or comments, let me know, and I'll see you on the next one.